Have you ever stopped to think about what really defines evil? In a world filled with chaos and injustice, this question has echoed for centuries among philosophers, theologians, and scientists. Today, we explore this complexity, revealing not only the origins of evil, but also how our own choices shape this reality. Get ready for a journey that will challenge your beliefs and open new perspectives on human nature. The concept of evil in philosophy is a topic that has intrigued thinkers for centuries. Since ancient times, philosophers such as Plato and Aristotle have tried to understand what evil means. For Plato, evil was not an autonomous presence, but rather the absence of good. Thinking this way, he argued that evil arises from ignorance. Aristotle, on the other hand, explored the idea that evil is the result of a deficiency in the virtues. In his works, he established ethics as a search for virtue and good living. Modern thinking has brought new perspectives. Immanuel Kant, for example, spoke of evil as a matter of will. He argued that human beings have the capacity to act in accordance with moral duty, but this capacity can also be used for immoral actions. Contemporary analysis still permeates the concept of evil, as in existentialist philosophy, where the experience of absurdity and anguish are central to understanding the human condition. As the decades passed, the discussion about evil diversified, including debates about systemic and structural evil in societies, in addition to reflections on human nature and morality, establishing the idea that evil is a force both internal and external to the world. Individual, permeating society in ways too complex to be simplified into dichotomous categories. Philosophical debates about evil remain crucial to understanding morality and ethics in contemporary society, reinforcing that although evil may be a constant, its definition and understanding are culturally shaped. In mythology and religions, evil has different interpretations and meanings that reflect the cultural and historical diversity of humanity. For example, in Greek mythology, the figure of Pandora and her box symbolize the release of all evil in the world, which, according to the narrative, are confused with the human condition and curiosity. Christianity, in turn, presents evil in a dualistic perspective, often personified in the figure of Satan, as a force opposed to God, whose work is to seduce and lead humans into sin. Judaism contemplates evil from a perspective that involves free choice, where individuals have the free will to choose between good and evil, reflecting a personal responsibility in the fight against evil. Eastern religions, such as Hinduism, view evil as part of a cycle of reincarnation and karma, where a person's actions in past lives impact their present and future. In this sense, evil is often seen as a consequence of human actions, an illustration of the links between morality, actions, and consequences. Thus, myths and religious teachings around the world not only attempt to explain the origin of evil, but also offer paths of redemption and learning, revealing the complexity and depth of human beings' relationship with evil and their search for meaning and ethics. In your choices, this diversity of interpretations alone already reveals the depth of the subject and the need for human beings to make sense of what is considered negative and evil in their lives. Psychological studies on evil cover a wide range of dimensions, from antisocial behavior to the underlying motivations that lead individuals to commit acts considered evil. One of the main fields of research is behavioral psychology, which tries to understand why some people seem to act in cruel or violent ways. Personality theory, for example, suggests that characteristics such as narcissism and psychopathy may predispose some individuals to behaviors that society considers to be evil. Social psychology also focuses on the topic, exploring how group influence can lead ordinary people to commit acts of evil, as demonstrated in classic studies such as Milgram's, where participants were led to inflict pain on others under the guidance of authority. Dehumanization, an important concept in psychology, happens when individuals or groups become seen not as people but as others, which facilitates violent actions. Furthermore, the concept of banality of evil, formulated by philosopher Hannah Arendt, proposes that normal individuals can perform evil acts when inserted into totalitarian systems or situations that deactivate empathy. The discoveries of psychology help us understand the duality of the human being, revealing not only the capacity to do evil, but also the circumstances and processes that can lead a person to act contrary to society's ethical values. These explorations aim not only to understand evil, but also to seek ways to prevent it and promote prosocial behaviors that foster compassion and empathy. Historical narratives about evil often reflect the socio-political and cultural context of a time. From wars and conflicts that devastated societies, such as the Crusades or the atrocities of the Second World War, to slavery and genocides, these realities have shaped the understanding of what is considered evil. Historians note that evil is often used as a rhetorical tool by leaders and regimes to justify violent or repressive actions. A study of cases like the Holocaust reveals not only the human potential for evil, but also the way in which ideologies can dehumanize entire groups, allowing mass atrocities under the justification of defending a superior cause or race. The French Revolution, whilst seeking freedom and equality, also saw the misuse of power, where enemies of the people were eliminated in the name of justice. The way events like these are narrated and remembered in history forces us to confront the past and reflect on human nature itself and its capacity for both good and evil. History not only gives us records of crimes against humanity, but also stories of resistance and heroism, showing that even in dark times, kindness can prosper, making reflection on evil also an invitation to moral action and human learning. This leads us to understand that evil is a social and historical construction, dependent on narratives that change over time, and thus challenges us to reevaluate our definitions of morality and justice. In literature, theories that address good and evil present a rich tapestry of interpretation and reflection on the human condition. Authors throughout history from different cultures have studied this duality through their works, creating characters and plots that challenge the perception of what is morally right or wrong. Classics such as Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde explore the internal struggle of a man torn between his selfless nature and his dark instincts, reflecting the constant battle many face. In the same sense, The Divine Comedy, by Dante Alighieri, presents a journey through good and evil, with each level of hell symbolizing human sins and their consequences. This form of literary approaches emphasizes that good and evil are not absolute. They often coexist within the same being and are shaped by experiences, choices, and external influences. These narratives help to create a space where readers can explore their own beliefs and ethical dilemmas, promoting deep reflection that transcends mere reading and becomes an introspective journey into human nature. The role of society in shaping the concept of evil is an issue that is intertwined with the culture, values, and norms that a community establishes over time. What is considered evil in one society may be seen as acceptable or even noble in another. This reveals the ability of social conventions to shape morality. For example, practices that were common in ancient civilizations, such as slavery or war to conquer land, may have been seen as normal at the time, but today they are universally condemned. This moral evolution is inseparable from social growth and collective experiences. The role of educational, religious, and political institutions is also crucial in this context, as they are often the ones who disseminate values and norms that define what is seen as evil. Furthermore, in contemporary societies, the impact of social networks and instant communication has enhanced debates about morality, bringing to light issues that were previously silenced. This dynamic between society and the concept of evil is a continuous reflection, where the voices of minorities and social movements play a fundamental role in redefining what it means to be fair or unfair, good or bad. The presence of dual characters in classical literature exemplifies the complexity of human nature and the internal struggle between good and evil. An iconic example is what we find in Steppenwolf, by Hermann Hesse, where the main character, Harry Haller, struggles between his humanitarian instinct and his savage tendencies. This duality is a mirror of the tensions we all face at some point in our lives. Another example to highlight is the character of Lord Voldemort from the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling, who embodies absolute evil, opposed to the hero Harry, who represents good and resistance. In each of these narratives, the authors not only present the characters, but develop their stories in such a way that the reader is led to question what defines evil and whether it is possible to redeem oneself. Reading such works is not just for entertainment. It is also a gateway to understanding the internal struggle we all face, showing that the lines between good and evil are often blurred. These characters encourage us to reflect on our own paths and the choices we make in search of deeper meaning. The relevance of duality in human understanding is a concept that permeates not only literature, but several areas of knowledge, including psychology and sociology. Understanding that both good and evil exist within each of us helps us accept our humanity in its entirety. This manifests itself in the way we deal with our moral dilemmas, interpersonal relationships, and social justice. Research shows that awareness of duality can promote benevolence and empathy by leading us to understand that others may be struggling with the same internal issues as us. Furthermore, recognizing that harm can arise from situations, contexts, and social pressures can help us adopt a more compassionate stance, avoiding hasty judgments. The struggle between good and evil is an intrinsic aspect of the human experience that invites us to question and reflect on our daily actions, to strive to understand others, and to seek ways to alleviate suffering in the world. This constant reflection on duality not only enriches our personal lives, but also shapes more just and inclusive societies. Representations of evil in cinema have evolved over time, reflecting both social concerns and transformations in society. From the first horror films such as Nosferatu, which portrayed the vampire as a creature of pure evil, to more contemporary ones, such as Get Out, which explores prejudice and manipulation, cinema has been a mirror of our anxieties and perceptions about evil. Villains have become iconic, like Darth Vader in Star Wars, who symbolizes the internal struggle between good and evil. Cinema uses evil to create tension and drama, but also to provoke reflections on morality and what it means to be truly evil. Stories that embrace redemption, like Elphaba's in Wicked, challenge the idea that evil is absolute, showing that often behind evil actions are contexts that merely justify it. Evil in cinema is not just a frightening figure, but a concept that invites audiences to explore their own beliefs and values, as well as the complexity of human nature. These cinematic narratives have the power to make us question assumptions about what is considered evil and how this is reflected in our own lives, establishing a bridge between entertainment and personal reflection. The impact of social media and games on the perception of evil is a phenomenon that cannot be underestimated. With the advent of digital platforms, ideas and behaviors that could previously be considered isolated gain a new breadth, allowing this concept to spread quickly. Social networks, for example, can be a stage for cyberbullying, where evil manifests itself through harassment and public humiliation. These acts, often triggered by the anonymity provided by the internet, have devastating consequences for the victims, who become targets of a diffuse evil that is often difficult to combat. On the other hand, electronic games have generated debates about the player's immersion in morally questionable situations, where the line between right and wrong becomes blurred. Some games, by allowing players to experience different facets of evil, offer a safe space to explore these concepts without real consequences. What is played as entertainment can easily influence real behavior, creating a connection between evil fiction and everyday life. However, it is up to users to develop a critical sense of what they consume, understanding the difference between fun and the normalization of harmful behaviors. Literature, in its multiple forms, has a long tradition of exploring human evil, reflecting the cultural and emotional understanding of each era. Writers use evil to question our most primal instincts and to confront the complex nature of ethics. Classic works like William Golding's Lord of the Flies discuss how civilization can fall apart, leaving the evil instinct we all carry to the surface. Furthermore, modern soap operas use evil as a means to discuss contemporary issues, including inequality and injustice. Often, these texts encourage readers to critically reflect on their own lives and the choices they make, raising questions about personal responsibility and the ability to overcome. Detective novels, with their twists and complex villains, not only provide entertainment, but also help create a more refined perception of what constitutes bad, opening up space for discussion about morality and empathy. Literature continues to be a powerful tool for examining evil, encouraging introspection and critical analysis of human actions, showing that despite the darkness, the search for compassion and justice is a constant in the human narrative. The role of comic books in representing evil is a fascinating dynamic that has expanded since the popularization of superheroes. Initially, the villains were caricatures of evil, such as Lex Luthor and the Joker, who symbolized extreme and often absurd characteristics of what is considered evil. However, as the narrative evolved, many comics began to offer a more nuanced view of these antagonists, exploring their motivations and the idea that evil can be a social construct. Stories like Watchmen and The Killing Joke feature villains with emotional complexity, challenging the idea that there are only heroes and villains. These narratives encourage questioning about what it really means to be evil and whether these actions can be justified by chance or past trauma. The popularity of comics has allowed discussions on the topic of evil to enter our culture in an accessible way, captivating the public and challenging them to think about their own perceptions. Thus, comic books are not just entertainment, but a space for moral reflection, confronting the reader with profound questions about our ethical nature and the consequences of our choices. The ethics of responsibility and free will invite us to reflect on our role in the choices we make daily. The nature of evil, when analyzed in the light of ethics, reveals itself to be intrinsically linked to the concept of free will, which is the ability to decide between different actions. When we face moral situations, we are often challenged to consider whether or not our actions can be justified. The decisions we make, especially those that involve the suffering of others, confront us with our personal responsibility. For example, a mother who decides not to seek medical treatment for her child may be acting out of deep convictions, but she is also making a choice that could be seen as evil, depending on the ethical perspective. Thus, the ethics of responsibility teaches us that, regardless of the situations we find ourselves in, we are responsible for our choices. This responsibility does not only exist at the individual level, but also at the collective level, as decisions by a community or society can generate broad and lasting consequences. Free will, therefore, requires that we consider the well-being of others and the implications of our actions on others, promoting an ethical vision that seeks not only the right to choose, but also the responsibility resulting from these choices. None. The evil in complex moral decisions often manifests itself in dilemmas that force us to weigh what is right and what is right. Imagine the situation of a doctor in a hospital where resources are scarce. He has a limited number of ventilators and must decide who to provide support to. This choice involves not only the value of life, but also ethical questions about the quality of life and each patient's chances of recovery. It's a life or death situation that defies both empathy and logic. The complexity of these decisions can lead to a state of moral anguish, where the weight of what is considered evil can cause significant internal suffering. Utilitarian ethics, for example, advises that the best decision is the one that brings the greatest good to the greatest number of people, but this approach can dehumanize individuals who are on the front line of the choice. Furthermore, virtue ethics, which values the character of the agent, encourages us to ask not only what is best for the collective, but who we are becoming when making such decisions. When it comes to evil, therefore, the way we approach complex moral decisions reveals not only the nature of the situation itself, but also brings to the surface our deepest beliefs about life, dignity, and responsibility. Contemporary examples of ethical dilemmas are evident in various spheres, from medicine to environmental issues. One of the most debated cases today is related to technology and privacy. For example, the use of algorithms to predict behaviors and decisions on digital platforms can impact the lives of millions, raising questions about the extent to which individual privacy should be respected for the greater good. Another example is the discussion of euthanasia, where the pain and suffering of a terminally ill patient may lead to consideration of suicide assistance. Here, evil is seen in not only accepting the pain of others, but also in the fight for a right that can be interpreted both as libertarian and as an act of renunciation of life. Ethical concerns also extend to social and political justice, where issues related to inequality and discrimination generate dilemmas about what is fair and what is morally acceptable. Therefore, contemporary decisions are not just matters of individual choice, but reflect a complex mesh of social interactions that often challenge our traditional conceptions of good and evil, highlighting that ethics is a dynamic and constantly evolving field. Reflections on justice and forgiveness occupy an important place in the discussion about evil. Historically, societies often resort to justice as a way of repaying the evil that was done, seeking to reestablish an order that was broken. However, justice often proves insufficient to heal the wounds left by suffering. Forgiveness appears, then, as a powerful and transformative alternative, capable of giving new meaning to the trauma and promoting inner peace for both the victim and the aggressor. In contexts such as national reconciliation, where countries that suffered from dictatorships, for example, try to deal with their histories, forgiveness is an essential tool for social healing. This dynamic raises questions about who should be forgiven and what the limits of forgiveness are. The dilemma intensifies when we consider that the act of forgiving does not mean forgetting, but choosing to move forward without the weight of resentment. Forgiveness can be seen as an ethical response to evil, an act of courage that does not ignore pain, but seeks to transform it into learning and growth. When we reflect on the pain of our past and what it means for the future, we realize that the intersection between forgiveness and justice is a necessary path towards building a more empathetic society and less divided by the fear of evil. Evil is often perceived as an entity that exists on its own, something that is inherent to certain individuals or actions. However, many scholars and philosophers argue that evil is actually a social construct shaped by cultural norms, values, and collective experiences. What is considered evil in one society may be seen differently in another, which highlights the subjectivity of the concept. For example, practices that were common and accepted in ancient societies, such as slavery, are seen as deeply wrong today. This evolution in perceptions of what is considered evil results from a series of ethical and moral dialogues that occur over time. Furthermore, social narratives directly influence how evil is understood and treated. When an act is dehumanized or labeled as evil, it can lead to serious consequences, such as the exclusion or punishment of individuals or groups. The social construction of evil is also evident in the way leaders and institutions approach behaviors that challenge norms. Such constructions are fluid and reflect society's constant struggle to define and redefine what it considers acceptable or not. Women, in particular, play a crucial role in dismantling stigmas associated with evil, reshaping conversations around issues such as domestic violence, bullying, and discrimination. This more inclusive and humanized approach attempts not only to understand the context behind reprehensible actions, but also to offer space for repentance and rehabilitation, rather than mere condemnation. The future of the concept of evil in ethics. The concept of evil is constantly evolving, and its understanding is increasingly complex in a rapidly changing world. With advances in technology, human interactions are transforming, raising new ethical questions about what should be considered bad. The growth of artificial intelligence, for example, brings to light moral dilemmas about responsibility and control over the results of these machines' actions. We live in an era where challenges such as misinformation and social polarization also deepen discussions about what evil is. Contemporary ethics therefore needs to integrate new approaches that consider not only individual responsibility, but also the role of social and organizational structures that shape behavior. Ethical reflection must recognize cultural diversity and the different contexts from which evil emerges, promoting a global dialogue that helps societies reconnect with their essential humanities. The future of the concept of evil, therefore, may involve a more inclusive and dynamic vision, where understanding the nuances of human behavior underpins the construction of actions that move away from evil. The avoidance of evil, paths for society. Preventing evil is a complex task that requires collaboration from all social spheres. Educating future generations in empathy, respect, and ethics is one of the main paths to be taken. Starting with the family environment itself, transmitting values that encourage dialogue and understanding instead of aggressiveness is essential. Furthermore, promoting social spaces that encourage critical reflection on actions and their consequences can help create more cohesive and supportive communities. At broader levels, public policies aimed at preventing violence and discrimination, combined with actions that promote social justice and well-being, need to be designed and implemented. Educational institutions and community organizations also play a crucial role in building a society that refuses to accept evil as part of its reality. Therefore, collective actions, ranging from the micro to the macro, are fundamental to encourage everyone to become agents of change in the fight against what is seen as evil in its most diverse forms. Conclusions: evil as part of the human experience. At the end of this reflection, it is important to recognize that evil is part of the human condition, but it does not define the entirety of our existence. The narratives we construct and the experiences we live unfold into different interpretations of what evil is and how we respond to it. Understanding evil also allows us to value good and its importance in our lives. Through art, literature, and shared stories, we find ways to reframe our experiences with pain and injustice. The fight against evil should not lead us to despair, but to a space of learning and resilience. Considering that each act of kindness echoes around us, it is possible to see the future not as a mere repetition of past patterns, but as an opportunity for transformation. We can, then, seek change through solidarity, empathy, and love, principles that represent overcoming darkness. Thus, reflection on evil will be not only an investigation of its origins, but also a hopeful expectation about how we can shape a more just and kinder world. Evil is a complex, multifaceted construct that causes us to question our own choices, beliefs, and the nature of the human condition. When we reflect on evil, we cultivate greater empathy and responsibility in our actions, remembering that there is always the possibility of redemption and change. We're curious to know, what story about good and evil would you like to hear in our next video? Share your ideas in the comments. How do you define evil in your life, and what experiences have shaped that definition? Do you believe that evil is inherent to humans, or is it shaped by social and cultural circumstances? If you like this content and want to reflect more on topics like this, subscribe to our channel and don't miss the next video, where we will explore more deeply the nuances between good and evil in contemporary society.